The escape from Alcatraz prison remains one of the smartest and most powerful escape and disappearance operations known to humanity. Alcatraz prison is also considered the most dangerous prison in history and one of the most terrifying and fortified prisons in the world, as it was built on an island surrounded by water on all sides. It was also nicknamed the Rock Prison or the Hell of Steel and Concrete. This prison was home to the most dangerous criminals and worst inmates throughout the ages, known for its reputation as an impenetrable fortress. Despite that, the prison witnessed several escape attempts, all of which failed, except for one attempt described as the greatest prison escape in history. This attempt, which took place 61 years ago, was planned with genius and intelligence, and executed with boldness and extreme precision by a group of highly skilled individuals, making it a true legend, documented with all details and evidence. This prison also became a symbol of strength and fortification, and it became surrounded with an aura of mystery and excitement. It became known worldwide as the prison from which escape is impossible. Alcatraz prison was opened in the year 1934 and remained for 28 years known for the impossibility of escaping from it. No prisoner was able to escape until the year 1962, when an exceptional escape occurred. Just 1 year later, the prison was permanently closed. Although the escape might have been one of the factors influencing the decision to close it, the main reason was the high costs of operating and managing the prison. Alcatraz was distinguished by its strategic location on an island surrounded by cold seawaters from all sides, about 1.25 miles from the San Francisco shore. Even if someone succeeded in escaping its walls, the coldness of the water, which is about 33 degrees Fahrenheit, even in the summer, makes crossing this path almost impossible. To control the minds of the prisoners, the prison administration contributed through the guards to spreading fabricated myths and rumors of terrifying stories to scare the prisoners and prevent them from even thinking about escaping. Although all this talk was just lies, the prison administration continued to spread these terrifying myths as they were part of Alcatraz's strategy, all to enhance its reputation as an impregnable fortress. It was necessary to spread fear among the prisoners through false myths. For example, the prisoners were told that the surrounding sea waters were full of sharks, and that anyone daring to swim to escape would become a tasty meal for these predatory creatures. In addition, rumors were spread that the prison guards had exceptional shooting skills and had orders to immediately shoot any prisoner attempting to escape. Even though all these stories were just lies, the prison administration continued to cleverly promote them to reinforce the feeling of helplessness and despair among the prisoners. The implicit message to the prisoners was that there was no chance of escape, and any attempt would end in failure or death. In addition to the strict guard and high security, it made the prisoners believe that staying inside Alcatraz until the end of their sentence was the only option. And because the prison was designated to contain the most dangerous and notorious criminals, these stories became an effective psychological tool to suppress any aspirations they had towards the outside world. Thus, Alcatraz prison became a symbol of strength and discipline that seemed impossible to break. Among the most famous names that passed through Alcatraz prison was the notorious American gangster Al Capone, as well as Rash Kelly, one of the most dangerous criminals who were imprisoned. prison was the final destination for many of the most dangerous criminals who posed a direct threat to society. Despite everything we've mentioned, do you think that such criminals can remain completely calm and peaceful without attempting to escape? Of course not. During Alcatraz's operation, there were 14 escape attempts, but all ended in failure. Either the prisoners were caught or killed during their attempts. However, there was one exceptional attempt that succeeded in destroying the prison's reputation as an impregnable fortress. This is the story we will talk about today. That escape plan was executed by 4 prisoners. The first was Alan West. The second was Frank Morris. The third and fourth were the brothers John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. Alan West was the one who proposed the idea of escaping from Alcatraz prison before they were transferred to Alcatraz. These 4 prisoners had a long history of failed escape attempts, which led to their transfer to this fortified prison to prevent them from considering escape again. While spending time working inside the prison, Alan West noticed an opportunity that was not clear to others. The prisoners worked on a variety of tasks, such as cleaning cells, carpentry, and making repairs. One day, while Alan was assigned to clean the cell roof, he noticed a ventilation opening leading to the building's roof. This vent was different from the others, as it was not covered with concrete like the other vents, making it less durable and more susceptible to exploitation. Despite the presence of steel bars covering the opening, West realized that these bars could be cut or bent relatively easily compared to the prison's strict standards. Thanks to his keen observations and creative sense, Alan began developing his plan for this vent to be the key to escaping Alcatraz, which ignited the enthusiasm of his 3 other companions to start executing the plan. After Alan West noticed the ventilation opening that could be the key to escape, he quickly informed his colleague Frank Morris, who was in the cell next to him. The cells of the 4 prisoners were close to the opening, making this an ideal opportunity to plan a group escape. Although the original idea came from Alan West, Frank Morris was the mastermind of the plan, quickly taking over the planning because he was the smartest among them all. According to prison records, Frank Morris has an intelligence quotient of 133, placing him within the top 2% of the world's population in terms of intelligence. Although he did not reach the level of genius, however, his exceptional mental abilities made him the most suitable to lead this complex operation. Frank Morris began studying the situation and devising a precise escape plan. And his first step was to invite the brothers John and Clarence Anglin, whose cells were next to his, to join them in the escape plan. The 4 quickly became a team working in harmony, sharing tasks and strategies to achieve their dream of escaping from Alcatraz. The proximity of the 4 prisoners' cells to each other was one of the crucial factors that contributed to the success of their plan. This proximity allowed them to communicate continuously with ease, which helped them coordinate the fine details of the escape plan. To reach the ventilation duct opening that Alan West discovered, it was located in a corridor behind their cells. This passage was part of the prison's ventilation and sewage systems, meaning that behind their cells were sewage passages. To reach it, they first had to get out of their cells without being noticed by the guards after freeing themselves from the cells. They had to enter this narrow passage that runs behind the cells. From there, they could climb the ventilation ducts, reaching the ventilation opening that West pointed out. Once they reach the opening, they can break or bend the steel bars covering it to get onto the prison roof and to reach the sewage passage. The question arises, how can they get out of their cells? Each cell had very small ventilation openings, so small that no human could pass through them. Therefore, the prisoners must first find a way to get out. Here, the role of Frank Morris emerged, who became the leader of the operation and the mastermind of the plan with his intelligence and precise analysis. Due to the prison conditions, Morris noticed that the walls surrounding the ventilation openings were weakened by the passage of time and the lack of necessary repairs, in addition to the effect of the salty seawater, which weakened the structure overall, so it was easy to dig into the walls. The team decided to exploit this point, but they needed digging tools, so they managed to collect metal spoons from the dining halls and began using them as primitive digging tools.
They worked patiently, day after day, to enlarge the small ventilation openings until they were big enough for their bodies to pass through. This process was extremely arduous.
It took several months of continuous work during the digging. It was essential for their work to remain completely secret. The prisoners made sure to dig only during the natural noise periods inside the prison, such as when the radio was on or during relative quiet to avoid being heard by the guards. In addition, they devised tricks to hide their progress. They covered the ventilation openings with fake panels made of painted cardboard, so that the openings appeared completely intact from the outside. This creativity and attention to detail were essential in keeping their plan undiscovered until the right moment. The prisoners also cleverly took advantage of available opportunities to hide the digging operations they were conducting in their cells. One of these opportunities was the time allocated for prisoners to play musical instruments. They were allowed to play for 1 hour every night. During this period, the team used the loud sound from the music to cover the noise of digging, which helped them to remain undiscovered. Additionally, there were sometimes maintenance works in the prison that caused additional noise. Therefore, the prisoners also used these periods to intensify their work, as it was difficult to distinguish the sounds of digging from the maintenance noises. The coordination among the four was extremely precise. They worked in shifts to ensure their activity inside their cells was not discovered. Every time they saw that the guards were away from their post, they would start digging. Moreover, they assigned one team member to continuously monitor the corridors while the others worked, to ensure they were alerted in case a guard approached. Although Alcatraz prison had the highest number of guards compared to any other prison in the United States, the prisoners managed to exploit any small gap in the security system to their advantage. Prison guards were also accustomed to conducting surprise counts of all prisoners at any time to ensure there were no violations. However, this measure was not sufficient to uncover the escape plan.
As for the other prisoners who were in the neighboring cells, they were aware of the escape plan, as they were able to see the prisoners digging into the walls of their cells to widen the ventilation openings. But interestingly, none of them reported these activities to the guards.
and they chose silence. On the contrary, they were helping them and offering assistance in simple ways, such as giving advice or helping to cover up any evidence that could reveal the plan. This spirit of solidarity among the prisoners, a fascinating psychological aspect emerges where mutual support prevails due to their shared feelings towards the harsh conditions in Alcatraz prison. According to the FBI report, the number of prisoners who were aware of the escape plan, about 80 prisoners, which represented nearly half of the inmates at Alcatraz during that period, also needed to conceal the ventilation openings they had been expanding, so they made cardboard panels in a workshop inside the prison. With their intelligence, they made sure to paint them the same color as their cell walls. Then they fixed them over the openings using a small amount of cement, making them look like a natural part of the walls. To enhance concealment, they placed their personal belongings, like their tools, clothes, or anything else in front of the hole, which helped to avert suspicion and made the openings invisible to the guards. These innovative measures were an essential part of their success in executing the plan with complete secrecy. After many long months of work and continuous effort, the prisoners managed to enlarge the ventilation openings to a suitable size that allowed their bodies to pass through. However, the digging process was just the first step in their bold plan. The goal was not just to escape from the prison, but they aimed to flee from the island itself. The main obstacle was the cold sea surrounding the island, known for its strong currents and low temperatures, making swimming almost impossible. Therefore, they had to find a way to make a boat by any means possible. At that time, one of the prisoners found an article in a mechanical magazine inside the prison, explaining how to make a rubber boat and life jackets using simple materials, like raincoats, which were abundantly available. This discovery was a major turning point in the escape plan. The prisoners began collecting and stealing raincoats from all over the prison, even from their fellow inmates who showed support and helped them gather the materials. They managed to gather about 50 raincoats, but they faced a major problem. Where could they store these materials? Also, where is the workspace for making the rubber boat and life jackets? The prisoners needed a space to work on the project like a secret workshop without attracting the guards' attention. The only suitable place was the roof above their cells, where Alan West discovered a ventilation duct opening. But this location was very exposed and under the watchful eyes of the guards who were constantly monitoring the prisoners. While they were doing prison work, led by Frank Morris, the mastermind of the plan, the prisoners devised a clever trick to avoid detection while making the boat, as they planned to disguise their activities and make it seem like they were doing regular work under prison supervision. This clever trick was the most important factor in the success of the entire escape operation, as it allowed them to work openly without arousing suspicion. Alan West was responsible for continuously cleaning the area above the cells, which gave him the opportunity to convince the guards to install blankets and covers on the upper bars to prevent dust from falling during cleaning. He even deliberately threw dust to show the guards that dust accumulation was a big problem. They must be handled by covering the bars. His plan succeeded in convincing the guards, allowing him to cover the bars with blankets and covers, thus creating a very nice space completely covered, away from the guards' eyes, which could be used as a work area. This was a risky step, but it enabled the prisoners to create a secret workshop, which is considered a major security error. It was also a big scandal for Alcatraz prison, known for being one of the most fortified and secure prisons in the world. It was shameful that the prisoners were able to execute such a plan under the guards' watch, and this point was not mentioned in the initial prison reports, and did not appear until the year 1000. And 1990, that is 20 years after the incident, with the blankets and covers remaining attached to the bars, covering the space in place for 2 full months, providing the prisoners with a protected area away from the guards' eyes. The prisoners took advantage of this period to literally turn that area into a workshop, where they took turns going up to work there. They then made rubber life jackets and cut the bars of the ventilation duct, using all the tools they needed, and they were also able to, from bringing it to that area. The biggest obstacle the prisoners faced was their absence from their cells, which the guards were used to checking with surprise inspections to verify the presence of the inmates. If one of them was working, and a guard suddenly entered his cell and found it empty, their plan would undoubtedly collapse. To avoid this predicament, the prisoners came up with a clever solution by making fake heads from simple materials like papier-mâché and synthetic hair. They would place these heads on the pillows and cover their fake bodies with blankets to make it look like they were sleeping. When the guard comes during the night inspection, he sees the fake head on the pillow and quickly moves to the next cell without noticing anything suspicious. And these are the actual images of the fake heads that fooled the guards for several nights. And some of these models are still preserved in the Alcatraz prison archive. Here the question arises, how did they make these heads and where did they get the materials? The prisoners devised a brilliant plan to make fake heads using all the available materials inside their cells. All they needed were pieces of soap found in their cells along with cement dust they collected from the digging process. Then they mixed the soap with cement dust. Then they brought toilet paper, paste, and molds they obtained from the prison workshop, mixed everything together, and managed to make fake heads. But the only part that was difficult to fake was the hair. Here, Clarence Anglin, one of the brothers involved in the escape plan, played a key role thanks to his work in the prison barbershop. He was the one who brought hair to make fake heads, each time bringing quantities of prisoners' hair, until they had enough hair to make the dummy heads. After preparing the fake heads, they would place them on the pillows to make it look like they were sleeping. At the same time, they would climb up every night and work in shifts in their secret workshop. And in this way, they worked non-stop for 2 months to make the rubber boat and life jackets after completing all the preparations. Finally, the anticipated day of the escape arrived. This attempt was one of the greatest prison escapes in history. On the night of June 11th, 1962, At exactly 9:30 in the evening, it was bedtime. After the lights of Alcatraz prison were turned off, the 4 prisoners began executing their escape plan. Each of them placed a fake head on their bed and covered it with a blanket to make it look like they were sleeping. Then they opened the ventilation holes they had dug over the past few months, leading to the back corridor behind their cells. This corridor led them to their secret workshop, and from there to the ventilation duct opening through which they passed to reach the prison roof. But things did not go exactly as planned, as only 3 of them managed to get out of their cells. As for the 4th prisoner, Alan West, he faced an unexpected problem. He had used too much cement to close the ventilation hole when restoring it to hide it, which caused the hole to harden and narrow. When it was time to escape, it was not easy to dig again. At the time, Alan West was facing the ventilation hole problem. The other 3 men told him they would continue with their plan and urged him to try to catch up with them as soon as possible, while Alan West remained trying to widen the hole to get out of his cell. The other 3 continued to advance. The first thing they did upon reaching their secret workshop was to prepare the rubber boat and life jackets. Then they removed the steel bars covering the vent leading to the roof. By the time they finished their preparations and removed the bars, Alan was still stuck in his cell and couldn't get out. At that moment, the 3 decided to proceed with their plan without waiting for him, leaving Alan behind, stuck in his cell. The 4 prisoners had previously agreed that if one of them encountered a problem or was unable to continue, the others would proceed with the escape plan without him. Thus, the other 3 men, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, managed to reach the prison roof. Then they quietly sneaked to avoid attracting the guards' attention. After that, they reached the prison walls, which were merely fortified fences. They had planned for this obstacle in advance and were able to cut through the fences easily using tools they had smuggled with them. After crossing the fences, they went directly to the shore. There, they inflated their rubber boat and used a tool that Frank Morris had. This tool had been modified to work silently without making any noise. At exactly 7 in the morning, the wake-up bell rang in the prison, and the routine morning count of the prisoners began. And each prisoner had to stand inside their cell while the guards moved from cell to cell to ensure each prisoner was standing inside. When the guard reached Frank Morris's cell, he called out to him 3 times without receiving any response. At that moment, the guard reached out to move the head of the prisoner who seemed to be sleeping, but instead of moving it, the fake head fell off the pillow and rolled on the ground in front of the guard, which shocked him greatly. Immediately, the prison warden was informed of the incident, and sirens began to blare throughout the prison. A comprehensive search operation was launched inside and outside the prison, and local authorities were notified. A large team from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, came to assist in the search and tracking of the escaped prisoners. Alan West was the first to be interrogated after the escape was discovered because the guards noticed a hole in his cell, and he couldn't hide anything. It became clear that he was one of the prisoners involved in the escape plan, and he could not deny his involvement. During the interrogation of Alan West, He seemed to be cooperating with them, as he had no other choice. He explained to them how to dig the holes, make the boat, and prepare the fake heads. However, the investigators had doubts that he was not completely honest, and they believed he hid some important information. It was suspected that he deliberately did not disclose the plans his three friends made after their potential arrival at the beach in San Francisco. Despite his apparent cooperation, Alan seemed to be trying to protect his friends and keep the details of the final stage of the escape secret, leaving the authorities in doubt about the escapees' plans and their fate after fleeing the island. After the escape was discovered, the Alcatraz Prison Administration conducted a thorough sweep of the entire island, but they found no trace of the three prisoners. It was certain they left the island using the rubber boat they made. The authorities, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, participated in a large-scale search operation, using their own boats for a thorough search in all areas surrounding the island. At the same time, officers were interrogating all the inmates inside Alcatraz. However, all the prisoners refused to provide any useful information, and none of them wanted to talk, preferring complete silence. The search operation continued to gradually expand day by day, becoming one of the largest searches conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation at that time. The operation included the surrounding coasts of the bay and even areas near San Francisco. However, no conclusive evidence was found. Indicates the survival or death of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. This escape was, of course, successful and is considered one of the most daring and complex attempts in the history of Alcatraz. The investigation did not stop and continued for many years. The Federal Bureau of Investigation worked on this case for 15 years. Then they handed it over to the local police. The Federal Bureau of Investigation officially concluded that the three prisoners drowned at sea. But the question remains, is this conclusion true, or just an interpretation from their perspective to hide their failure? And the most important evidence they were using to support this theory were the bags that were found during the search. These bags were made from the same materials used in making the raincoats that the prisoners used to make their rubber boats and life jackets for the escape. Life jackets were found, but the boat was not found. Inside the discovered bags, personal photos of them and their families were found, in addition to letters they exchanged with their families during their time in prison. The contents of the bag were considered of great value to the brothers, making its loss unexpected unless they perished in the middle of the sea, which is used as conclusive evidence of their drowning. However, at the same time, many experts oppose this theory, pointing out that it is impossible for none of the bodies to float to the sea's surface or be found through intensive search operations. Therefore, it seemed illogical to many experts and researchers. Then, a famous photo of the brothers appeared in the year 1975. It was said that the photo was taken in Brazil. That is, after their escape, they went to Brazil to live there. However, the authenticity of this image has not been confirmed, nor whether it actually belongs to them or not. In another development, it was said that the brothers' mother often received bouquets of flowers from an unknown source, raising further questions. And in the year 2013, it is said that a letter was received by the Federal Bureau of Investigation from a person claiming to be John Anglin, one of the brothers, where he alleged that he indeed managed to escape from Alcatraz prison with 2 other inmates, but he is currently in a bad situation. With his advancing age, he is 23 years old and suffers from cancer and is ready to surrender in exchange for treatment. There have been many theories and explanations about what happened after their escape from Alcatraz prison, but there is no definitive evidence so far that determines their fate with certainty.
And you, dear viewer, share your opinion with us in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to our channel to receive all the latest updates.